Big conferences have gotten crowded, and getting the attention of multifamily decision makers is harder than ever, until now. Introducing the Virtual AI and Innovation Forums from Commercial Observer. This is where hundreds of leading multifamily owner-operators, property managers, investors, developers, and asset managers gather to better understand how AI and emerging technologies are shaping multifamily. The next Virtual AI and Innovation Forum, which is called Reimagining Multifamily Through AI, Experience, and Data, is set for September 29. The event is designed to showcase your products and CEO's expertise, elevate your team's thought leadership, provide premier high-impact opportunities to connect with new clients, and expand your brand awareness to a national multifamily audience. If you'd like to learn more about how to participate, send me an email, ecohen@commercialobserver.com, or click the link in the show notes. I'm excited to help you reach multifamily decision makers. I'm Edward Cohen, and this is Tangent, a Commercial Observer podcast. Every year, commercial real estate brokers send cold emails, make unreturned phone calls, and stand at ICSC booths hoping the right tenant rep walks by. Meanwhile, tenants already know exactly where they want to open, market plans, trade areas, square footage requirements, timelines. The demand exists, it's just invisible to the people who own the real estate. US retail completions hit near record lows in early 2026. The tenants filling what little space exists are no longer department stores. They are grocery, fitness, healthcare, childcare, and quick service restaurants. Businesses that cannot move online. We do have the perfect guest to talk about this. Our guest today is Rafael Weiss, co-founder of Sytes. Rafael, where does this podcast find you?
I am in Boca Raton, Florida here. Just happy to be on with you, my friend. This has been a long time coming. We've talked about it.
Well, before we get started, the first tangent, Boca Raton. I mean, we should have recorded this at the Chris Evert Tennis Academy, which is also where I spend some of my elementary and high school winters. And I also discovered the American dream when I tasted my first slice of pizza at the Town Center Mall.
There you go. Yeah, it's funny. I went to Chris Everett too. I think we talked about that a while ago.
Small world. Rafael, you were a real estate developer before Sytes. So what specific moment made you realize the way tenants and property owners find each other was broken?
I was trying to do deals with tenants as a developer, and I realized this is crazy. I sent a deal to a tenant that I had under contract, and it took them so long to get back to me that I fell out of contract on the deal. 2 weeks after I lose the deal, the tenant comes back and tells me that I want to do the site. It's exactly that. It's like, why did it took me 2 weeks to even figure out if that tenant would be potentially available to do that deal, right? So I did a void analysis. I had to find their contact info, whatever. Maybe it took me a day to do that. I send the email out, oh, it goes to the wrong person. Or, oh, but they're going to intro me to the other guy. So now, it took a week to get that email back. Then I have to send another email to the new guy. This guy doesn't respond to me because he's getting 100,000 other emails from people that are sending him sites that don't make any sense because they don't have a franchisee there if they're a franchisor, or they don't have a need or requirement in that area. And by the time they get to my deal that they actually liked, it's too late.
Yeah, seems like it's a lot of broken communication, broken telephone, and overwhelming of noise for all parties involved.
Completely inefficient.
So, I mean, you've said it in some LinkedIn posts, which if people aren't following you yet, I definitely recommend that. You've said that commercial real estate doesn't have a demand problem. It has a visibility problem. So what do you mean by that, and what's the difference?
So what I mean is that there's a plethora of deals available. There are deals as far as the eye can see. There's also demand. There's a ton of supply. There's tenants that need sites everywhere. So what is the problem then? Why are there vacancies? Why do we have moments where a piece of land has been vacant for 2 years, it's been owned by a landlord, and then the landlord goes to a show, meets a tenant, shows them their site, and the tenant goes, oh, I would love that deal. How did that happen? Why was that connection not made 2 years ago, right? And it's just that there's so much noise that it's impossible to filter through all of it. So we needed to create a filtration system for these tenants to be able to ingest all of the deals that could potentially be sent to them and then filter them by, do we want to be in this area and does this meet our site criteria? So the issue isn't that there's not enough deals, there's plenty of deals. The issue is being able to filter through all of the deals and figure out which ones work and which ones don't fast enough to where these tenants and the representatives aren't overwhelmed. And also to make it so the right deals are going to the right tenants. Because a lot of times a landlord or developer or broker might not realize that that tenant wants to be in that market, or they might realize it, but it's like 2 months after that they were already said that they wanted to be in that market, right? Or 3 months after, or 4 months after, because they might know everybody in the market, in every hyper local market, but they don't immediately contact everybody,
Hmm.
right? And that's when Sytes changes. We notify every single landlord, developer, broker the second that a tenant wants to be in their market and is a match for their site.
That sounds quite interesting. So you fully bootstrap sites. Tell us, what have you built, and then how did you get your first customers to pay up front before the product was fully built?
A little persuasion, that's for sure. I had some connections in the space, obviously, from being a landlord and a developer. And essentially, I discussed with Go-To Foods, which was a tenant that I worked with. And basically, I found out that they had an issue with filtering and with submissions. And I was like, well, if I build you this product, and we had a basic version of it, I was like, would you pay for this? And they're like, yeah, of course we'd pay. So we got them to start paying for the very basic version of the product and eventually scaled it and rolled it out over time with them.
For context, Go-To Foods is the franchisor behind Jamba Juice and Carvel and Cinnabon. And
Yeah, Auntie Anne's, McAllister's, Schlotsky's, Jamba Juice, Moe's Southwest Grill.
so it seems like there's also a demand data issue up until now that you're solving as well. Why do you think it used to be opaque for this long in commercial real estate to access this data? You think it was a technology problem or a trust and incentive problem?
I think it was a combination of both. It was very taboo to show where you wanted to open new locations or tell people that. It was kind of left to, yeah, we're having a conversation. Oh, I'll tell you this way. We're in an era where AI can take any tenant that's expanding and reverse engineer their market plan.
Hmm.
Nothing is proprietary anymore. Coincidentally, retail demand is at an all-time high and supply is at all-time low. So it's a perfect storm of tenants that can't get enough space, can't get enough deals done, need to get proactive, and technology getting to the point where proprietary systems and data points aren't really that proprietary. And also having the tools and the marketplace to be able to build something that connects everything together. Now, we're very sensitive with the tenant's data. We make it so if you're a tenant and you don't want to show where you're going on a map, you don't have to. You could just match with landlords, developers, brokers who have a site that works for you under their control. And then you only let the people who have perfect deals for you in areas where you want to be, let it be known that you want to be there. And we even take it a step further. You can even hide yourself as a tenant. So you could say National QSR burger chain wants to be on your site. I don't know who it is. Could be In-N-Out, could be Burger King, whoever. Once the tenant wants to reveal who they are, they can. But the landlord, developer, broker can still send them a site and put their rent in what they want and get what they get.
Hmm.
So we're allowing tenants to be able to anonymously expand for the
Hmm.
first time ever. And we know that there's a lot of tenants that get overcharged in rent based on who they are. This gives them an advantage, while it also gives the landlords, developers, brokers an advantage by making sure that you know everybody that wants to be on your site.
Hmm. That's interesting because that adds a lot of nuance, which I think is something that we haven't had, and it's thanks to technology like yours, but also thanks to a shift in how deals get done and also ultimately the demands of tenants. And yeah, it seems like depending what stage you're in of the deal, certain information can be revealed to the other parties to advance the deals and make them happen, or at least make them discard a site faster. Walk us through what Sytes is today then. You guys have nearly 350 tenants, over 35,000 active site listing across all the US. So how does a deal happen on your platform?
So essentially what happens is a tenant uploads their market pen. So a tenant rep broker can highlight areas where they're representing a tenant and say, hey, we need 1,500 square feet of inline retail with a grease trap. And every single site that a landlord broker developer that has 1,500 square feet and a grease trap in that area, they get notified immediately that there's a tenant that's looking on their site that would be willing to go on their site. With the click of a button, they can hit send proposal, and it goes right to the real estate rep who is representing that tenant, and they can go from there and manage the deal, go through the process, look if they'd want to do it. And once they have a basic set of LOI set up, they go off the platform and sign the lease.
Do you have any specific examples you can share? I mean, that sounds all great, but always putting real world examples without mentioning names necessarily. Anything you can share?
Yeah, so perfect example, one of our most successful tenants was Church's Chicken. They are having a big revitalization right now as a brand entirely. They are ranked, I think, number 27 on the QSR Top 100 quick service retail chains. They are a heavy utilizer of Sytes. They require pretty much every site that's sent to them to go through Sytes. They look at all the site submissions and are able to filter out basically every single deal. So I think they have 16 deals that are pretty much done. I don't know if they've been built or not. I know that there were a couple deals that have closed, as in the deal was sent to them on Sytes by a broker after they verified that they wanted to be in that market, and the franchisee actually ended up buying. They've only been on the platform for 7 months now, I think.
Hmm.
So it takes longer than that to get a commercial development done. So it's hard to track like how many churches have been opened. So the
Hmm.
easiest thing for us was obviously the purchases. So I think they've gotten 3 or 4 purchases done, as in like 100% the franchisee has bought that site. I know one got done in Central Florida. I forgot who the broker was. I know the real estate rep, Tammy, was the one that got it done. And she loves Sytes. She uses it all the time, talks about it. So it's been pretty cool. But yeah, they have 16 in the pipeline.
I mean, with that branding, how can you not expect customers to be heavily devoted towards churches and their chicken?
Well, what's crazy is we don't charge that much for these tenants. For a team of 5, it's $500 a month. Okay. Let's take 16 of those churches and say they're worth $2 million each. That's $32 million. That's pretty amazing that a product that you're paying for $500 a month has created $32 million of value for one brand. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they never would have gotten those sites if it wasn't for Sytes. So maybe they would have been sent to them, but maybe they wouldn't have been. Maybe they would have sent it to somebody else. But churches made it as easy as humanly possible for a landlord, developer, broker to send them a deal, right? And this is the proactive part that I think gets missed. A lot of this is marketing. There's a lot of tenants that would take a site,
Hmm.
but is there a lot of tenants that's put themselves right in front of you as a landlord, developer, broker and say, hey, I am going to do this deal? So what are you going to do if you're a landlord, developer, broker? Are you going to take your site, do a void analysis, figure out what tenants aren't there, figure out the contact info for the right rep who manages that area, then find out if they even want to be there, and then do the deal? That process, 2 to 4 weeks to get it done. Or you type your address in Sytes, see every tenant that wants to be there, click send proposal, takes 5 seconds, literally 5 seconds. That's the difference. That is what we've changed. We've accelerated a month, 2 month long process into 5 seconds.
That's a 10x right there, or a 100x, if you will. You teased about a awesome case study that you did recently on LinkedIn with Kimco and MyEyeDoctor.
Uh,
Would you mind expanding on that one?
yeah, so what we're doing is something very interesting. So REITs and large scale landlords do something called portfolio reviews. They go and look at their entire portfolio with a single tenant and say, hey, we have matches here, 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 here. We can do a blanket lease agreement on all of our centers where it's the same lease and you can take up a bunch of space. And we have a great relationship. Now, in the past, that worked because they knew each other. They would sit down and go through an Excel spreadsheet and look through the matches, and it was all manual. Now, all they have to do is go on sites and it's all done for them because we have Kimco's entire portfolio on there. We have everywhere that my eye doctor wants to be. And all Kimco has to do as an organization is click filter by my eye doctor, and then they'll see every single site that would work for my eye doctor. And if it's vacant, will it be vacant in a couple of years? My eye doctor denotes if they would do that site in a year from now, a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, because their market plan is going to be time based. And we can literally do a master lease agreement based on this information, right? Not us, but the landlord themselves. But we can essentially set it all up for them. So now they're able to see by tenant, which is really cool
Hmm.
and has never existed before. Yeah.
Fascinating. So, how does the platform work? I mean, you mentioned different sizes of clients, different types of clients or users, if you will, from the institutional REITs like InvenTrust or Kimco, tenants like Dutch Bros to Papa John's. So, does the platform work the same way for a family office with, say, 5 strip centers as it does for a REIT with 500 properties?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously the REITs will create more value because they have more value to offer, right? And more value to be created. But a normal owner of a strip center can come onto sites and say, hey, I want to buy my county, that I have a strip center in for $1,000 for the year or whatever. And they'll know every single tenant that wants to be in their county and their strip center will be in there and they can do deals based on it that way.
Hmm.
So they could set it up that way. They could buy the entire state they're in for either 2,000 or 3,600, depending on if it's a premium state or a standard state. And it doesn't break down to that much. It's like $165 a month for a standard state to know if a tenant wants to be in your site currently or monitor to see if they will be,
Mm,
right? That's a great value
right.
because you get one deal done. I mean, your subscription's paid for the rest of your life.
Right. So it's a marketplace platform, right? Where you have the tenant side and you have the owner, the landlord side. Are they
Yeah.
both paying a subscription? Is that how it works? Do you charge if the transaction ends up happening, or you just keep charging for the dynamic update of the data and availability and the demand and supply?
Yeah. So the tenants pay, the landlords pay, everybody pays because
Okay.
everybody's making money. And we realize something. When you give something to somebody for free, they don't appreciate it and they don't value it. It's been
Hmm.
proven time and time again. That's why we don't do trials anymore or pilots, nothing. We don't do any of that. It's either you're committing to this for a year or we're not going to be able to do business
Hmm.
because it just doesn't work. It's human nature. If you don't pay for something, you don't value it, you don't log in, you don't use it, you claim it doesn't work, and then they leave. We've
Hmm.
had tenants that we signed up on a pilot plan. Two
Hmm.
months later, nobody logged in, and they're like, "Oh, we're done." Well,
Hmm.
you didn't even give it a chance, you know? Oddly enough, we've never had a tenant who signed up for a year cancel ever,
Hmm.
ever. So it's been pretty cool to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in terms of how people value it. You posted that the fear of retail dying actually created a scarcity that made existing retail more valuable. I mean, not only since the early 2010s when Amazon and e-commerce put retail in check, but then we were hit by COVID and strip centers and malls turned into vaccination centers and oftentimes self-storage or vehicle storage like we did at neighbor.com in around 22 and 23. But convince a skeptic in this audience who has been avoiding retail for 10 years. Why is retail back? Why is retail not going anywhere and it's only evolving?
That is a very easy question to answer, even though it was a long one. Just look at retail vacancies, look at new retail builds coming on the market, and you'll see that there is a drastic supply issue on the real estate side. They are just not building enough retail. I think this is the lowest year ever in completions on the retail side from what I remember reading from ICSC. I don't know the exact statistic, but there's just not enough real estate coming. Something that's scarce becomes more valuable. It's very
Hmm.
simple. But one thing I'd like to say is Sites isn't just retail. We have a lot of industrial tenants on there. We have some medical tenants. So we're not just one category. A lot of flex tenants are using Sites to get deals done and have in the past. Dogtopia has done a lot of deals. Fast Signs is a customer of ours. They take a lot of flex space. There's a couple different flex style tenants. Black Optics Tint is a user of ours.
No, that's awesome. Growing to other asset classes already makes a ton of sense. It is different what type of tenants, what type of space they're looking for, but at the end of the day, the dynamics of finding space, leasing space, they're not too different. And to your point earlier, yes, found the exact figure. US retail construction completions fell to a 20-year low in the first quarter of this year to just around 4.7 million square feet, according to CBRE. How do you think about, liquidity in specific markets? How do you think about growth? I mean, you're present across all the US, but do you need to have certain amount of spaces, certain amount of retailers, certain amount of tenants in a given market to make it work?
Yes. I mean, there definitely has to be some tenants looking in the market for it to make sense for a landlord. The tenants don't really need that because eventually the landlords will come. So essentially, like, we seeded it with like some tenant demand first and then filled the landlord demand in whatever market it is. But tenants always have more demand than a landlord can provide, and it goes into different markets, right? So that's basically how we're able to make it grow. Right now, we're fully in 52 states, if you want to count Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So we're completely national, have landlords and tenants everywhere.
So let's talk about AI. How do you see the rise of AI, especially when it comes to leasing agents using AI not only to review documents, but also even to negotiate? You floated the idea publicly that AI leasing agents negotiating with each other, could be within grasp. So how far away do you think is that, and what do you think it means for brokers when it arrives?
Man, it's gonna be crazy. I don't know. That's a great question. I think AI is gonna make us more efficient. Do I think it's gonna put us out of a job? I hope not. I don't know. It's an odd thing. I would like to think there always needs to be a human involved at the end of the day on a final decision for dealing with a property. So most likely it's gonna be humans using AI to negotiate with each other. And at the end of the day, there's always gonna be a someone making the call. And a broker is always going to be needed to put in the mix because they have the skills to negotiate and handle all of the inbound, filter out the BS, and basically manage something that these landlords don't have the time to manage themselves. So ideally, I think that that's how it'll go.
Let's put on in your developer hat again. If you could see exactly which tenants want to be in your property, in your corridor before you even break ground, how does that change the development underwriting process? How does the certainty of filling out those vacancies change the underwriting and how you think about your investment?
Oh, well, number one, I love that you asked that because I have that tool. I have it everywhere. It's amazing. It's called Sytes. And number two, I don't do a deal without it now. Why? Because I'm never going to do a deal that I don't at least see some tenant demand on. And that is basically a new metric that's never been created before. that we are able to put out there. And what we call it is tenant demand index. Okay. We index how much tenant demand is on a site. And let me ask you a question. Would you do a deal that is basically virtually identical to another one? The only difference is there's 0 tenants on that deal that are looking there on sites, and there's 10 tenants looking on the other deal. Which one would you choose?
Yeah, I want more tenants.
Yeah, obviously, because guess what? God forbid if a tenant goes out on your property, you want to know that there's other tenants looking in that market that would be willing to backfill it. So you want to be buying where there's tenant demand.
Right.
That is a metric that is extremely important and has never been able to be indexed before until sites.
Yeah, I mean, that changes the whole equation. And why do you think that's been the case that it has not been aggregated until now?
Well, like we talked about before, the reason is privacy. It wasn't out there. It was never on a marketplace like Sites because it never existed. So for the first time ever, tenants are finally showing that they need sites in certain locations. And with an amalgamation of all of that data, we can make certain assumptions. And one of them is tenant demand.
Certainly, I mean, speculative development has always meant guessing at demand, and if demand is visible before a shovel even goes to the ground, the risk profile of retail development or any sort of commercial development changes significantly.
Absolutely. And it's going to have long-lasting effects on commercial real estate. Number one, we're seeing pieces of land that were discarded in the past because they're 4, 5, 6 acres, and there's only one tenant that a developer knew that would be willing to do a deal there. Now they can take that tenant that they already know is willing to do a deal there, that they have a personal relationship with, go on to sites, find 3 other tenants that are willing to do a deal there, and now they can make that purchase of a 4, 5, 6, 7 acre piece of land actually pencil because they know what tenants would be willing to do the deal there, right? And then the other cool part is that tenants are now able to unlock space and real estate in areas that they never would have been able to because they are putting themselves out there with other tenants and giving that ability to developers to be able to take down larger pieces of land. So essentially, by participating in the marketplace, they are making deals that never would have existed for them in the past appear out of thin air.
You've decided to bootstrap, you're growing like crazy. There are other players not doing exactly the same thing, but there are other players that are in the space, venture backed, who have raised, big rounds to solve problems in the space. So, how do you think about the path of bootstrapping versus venture backing? Is that something that you've discarded for now, or how do you think about the next phase of growth?
It's an interesting question. I guess with the right partner, we would potentially consider taking on some money for a small piece, but I really like how we've been building it. We've been successful so far, so I don't feel the need to fix something that I don't feel is broken.
Yep, yep. Certainly not for everyone, and certainly not for every stage. Last but not least, collaboration superpower. If you could choose one person, historic or living, real or fictional, to do a partnership with, who would it be?
Ooh, all right. I know he's somewhat controversial, and he did it in his own way in a different marketplace. Travis Kalanick from Uber was a monster. And he beat the taxis. And there's an old guard in commercial real estate that we're fighting against. And it's information gatekeepers who made their entire livelihood by figuring out where a tenant's going and gatekeeping that and bringing it to their buddy who owns a site instead of every site in the market. And those people don't like what we're doing because we're democratizing commercial real estate in this aspect. And they've made money by taking advantage of the information asymmetry that Sites is making transparent. So that is exactly the type of guy that I would need to back me up here because I know that there's guys that do not like what I'm doing. Meanwhile, there's guys that love what I'm doing, of course, and brands and everything. But I feel like Travis had the exact same experience with the Uber and taxi cab fight. So I think he would understand what we're going through here probably the most and would be the best person to tag along with.
Good timing for that one because Travis just announced that his company Atoms, his robotics company, raised $1.7 billion this week, backed by Andreessen Horowitz and Fifth Wall, among others. So I'm sure he's not too busy. So Travis, if you're listening, reach out to Rafael and the team. Where can retail and commercial real estate landlords and tenants and brokers learn more about Sytes and connect with you?
Sytescre.com. That's Sytescre.com. We have a blog that we've been releasing different little articles about commercial real estate, site selection, kind of what we do. And also, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I like making some entertaining stuff for people in the commercial real estate industry. So Rafael Weiss, that's Rafaelweiss on LinkedIn. I am a fun follow, not to toot my own horn, but yeah, I put effort into it.
I can confirm you certainly entertain as well as inform, which is ultimately what content is all about. Today we covered why one of the most data-rich industries in the world has been operating on cold calls and conference booth conversations for decades, and what changes when tenant demand becomes visible in real time. We talked about how the retail market got to near record low new supply while demand from service-based tenants keeps climbing, and why that scarcity is reshaping how landlords, developers, and brokers think about what they own. Rafael, thank you so much for coming to Tangent again and for sharing your exciting company and vision with us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Muchas gracias. If you learned something new or enjoyed the conversation, text a friend the link to this episode right now. You can find links, resources, and ways to connect with us in the show notes.